I think I was thinking Habs in 7 before, and I don't think anybody can rip me for that there because it's just the hype. But after a little bit of consideration and some sitting down, having a glass of water, I am going to say the Washington Capitals in 6 games.
Welcome to the Checking from Behind podcast. Today's April 16th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach, as always, joined by my favorite co-host of all time. And we're not alone. We have our buddy and our partner, Zach Staden, joining the pod for a huge playoff preview predictions episode. Boys, the playoffs are just a day or two away. How you guys feeling today?
Bang. Bang. Excited. Excited. Very excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think round one of the playoffs is probably the best time to be watching hockey besides the Stanley Cup Final because you have so many teams playing in such intense games. And we got some really good matchups this year.
So this is how we're going to hop right into things. We're going to have the matchup, and then I'm going to end up reading off the odds to win the series per Money Puck, a player to watch, and then, of course, series winner. And then if we don't cover it in our episode, in our series preview, my question for each series. So starting with the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets versus the St. Louis Blues. The odds to win the series per Money Puck, the Jets at 70.3%. And the Blues at 29.6%. Players to watch, Connor Hellebuyck, and I do have the Jets in 6. I love the St. Louis Blues. I love me some St. Louis Blues, actually. But looking at this Winnipeg Jets team, last year they went up against a Colorado team that I felt like was the better team for not only most of that series, but a lot of the season as well, even though Winnipeg, I believe, finished higher than them. You have Connor Hellebuyck, who I think has a chip on his shoulder. Listen, he has a historic season this year. He's going to get some hard trophy consideration, probably win the Vezina Trophy unanimously, although shout out to Vasilevsky and Kemper, who have phenomenal seasons as well. And I feel like he's going to come into the series hearing a lot of noise from the past two postseasons, being like, you know what? He hasn't played as great. The team hasn't played as great. Let's go fuck some shit up. And if he can return to that 2018 Western Conference Final self where he was lights out, and that team had struggled scoring a lot of the times in that playoff run, but Hellebuyck carried them. And I think that he doesn't need to get to that aspect of his game, but if you hang around a 910 to 915 save percentage, this team can and probably will go to the Cup Final. And this is no disrespect to the Blues because they're no Colorado Avalanche team from last year, but the Blues being one of the best teams since the Four Nations break. Robert Thomas leads the NHL since February 22nd in assists and in points and in plus-minus rating. So you also have guys like Binnington and Kyrou, and Holloway's unfortunately going to miss at least the first portion of the series due to a lower body injury that he suffered a couple weeks ago. Such a shame because he's been a point-per-game player in the Montgomery area in St. Louis. But all in all, I just think the Winnipeg Jets are going to be too tough to overcome for the St. Louis Blues.
Well, let's get into it. I mean, the St. Louis Blues, I think you said it right there, Zach. Like, this is a team that should not be underestimated, how good they've been since the Four Nations has finished, what players have stepped up. I mean, Jordan Binnington, he's had his moments, and he's looked as steady as ever when it's come to this time. They have Colton Parayko back, who has been a nice surprise on the offensive side and has always been very nice on the defensive side. Talk about Robert Thomas, a guy who I think is more underrated when we talk about this NHL here. Jordan Kyrou, another individual there, and you touched on a guy in Dylan Holloway who no one expected 60-plus points this year, but unfortunately, we won't be able to see him. We'll see how that affects their scoring. And you look at the Winnipeg Jets, Kyle Connor, who stepped up big time. Mark Scheifele, extremely underrated season that nobody has talked about. Should he have made Team Canada? That's up for your debate. I think he probably should have. Then you go Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, what he said last year is that he said he was playing his best games. Their defense was not great. They faced Colorado. Not the most ideal matchup. Now Dallas gets that. So, I mean, 2 Connors by, snow's going up north. Let those Canadian colors fly. Jets in 7, baby.
Yeah, it's hard for me to go against the Jets. I think they're loaded. I think the one concern they had last year was their defense, and that really kind of bit them in the butt against the Avalanche last year, where they really didn't have an answer for the Avs offense. They did keep pacing them in game 1 last year. That was a completely wild game. What was the score? Like 7-6 or something insane like that. No, both goalies played awful that game, by the way. They loaded up. They added to the defensive team structure at the deadline when they added Luke Shen and I can't remember his name. It's gonna drive me crazy.
Tanev?
Brandon Tanev. I always forget him. And those are both going to be really good defensive kind of players for them. Tanev's not a world beater, but he's underrated defensively. Good penalty killer as well. And they have firepower as well. You just look at this team up and down, and they might be one of the most complete teams in the league, if not the most complete team in the league. And then you have St. Louis, who's been a really good story this year, completely turning their season around with a ridiculous winning streak to get them into the playoffs. 2 months ago, we were not talking about this team being a playoff team, honestly. But since the Four Nations break, this team has been on a heater. Do not underestimate them. Dylan Holloway being out is going to hurt. He's been tremendous for them this season. Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou have been carrying the load, though, in his stead. And I think Jordan Binnington's going to need to have a big season if the Blues want to make this a competitive series. I think they will keep things interesting and give me Jets in 6.
Love it. Next series, the Vegas Golden Knights against the Minnesota Wild. Odds to win the series, Golden Knights is 72.1% and the Wild at 27.9%. Players to watch, I'm going with my boy, like I have all season, Kirill to throw Kaprizov. I do have the Golden Knights in 5, though. And you look at the Golden Knights compared to Minnesota, and I think it's two completely different teams. The Minnesota team, which I think is like still a year or two away of truly becoming that contender that can get back to the 103 point threshold, because they do have 2 huge contracts in Parise and Suter off their books with the buyouts this season. But then, of course, you have to pay Kaprizov. But Vegas I think their depth is going to be too much. They have the better goaltending, although props to Gustafsson, who has had a phenomenal season as well and will look to continue it into the postseason. Jack Eichel is having an historic season with the Vegas Golden Knights, putting up record-breaking numbers in franchise history in assists and points. You have the depth of that team, which I think is going to be too much to override in Minnesota. The reason I'm honestly not saying it's a sweep is because I think there is a way where Kaprizov goes nuclear in one game and steals them a series. And having Kaprizov and Eriksson back from injury just in time for the playoffs, so crucial for this team. And this hurts my heart to say Vegas in 5 and not Wild in 5 or 7 is because I have been on the Wild wagon all season. But I just see a way where Vegas, a team with Stanley Cup aspirations, and Minnesota Wild, they're like, we got in, we're playing with house money. Like, I don't see a way where Vegas doesn't push the Wild past 6.
Yeah. And I mean, look, before I start my big conversation on this series, shout out to the Calgary Flames and their fans. Tough bounce there. But Minnesota, they got in. Cole Kaprizov and Eriksson 44% they played without Eriksson in this season, 50% without Cole Kaprizov, and they won 24 games with Kaprizov in the lineup. Shows you how much just those 2 players in general with strapped cap and how important they are to this team. Now, with all that being said, where am I going to go with here? I'm saying Vegas in 6. Now, I do love my Minnesota Wild. I love me some Gus Bus and how he plays. But the thing is, this year, he has been very inconsistent. I mean, we saw how he started off the season and how the middle of the season went for him was not too great. And when you look at the rest of their lineup, is their depth that solid? Still some younger guys still trying to find their way. Shout out Marco Rossi, who has played very good this year, an extremely underrated piece there. And I hope he stays there with all those rumors. Back end, very solid. But then you look at Vegas and you say that defense is absolutely atrocious to play against. You do not want to see that defense. And Zach, I think you did mention this, is that Vegas was a little bit underrated at the start of the year, right? Not many people were expecting them to be top of the division, still make playoffs, but there was questions about their depth, their scoring, and they kind of addressed that. Brandon Saad, Pavel Dorofeyev has been a very nice surprise. Jack Eichel is going to lead with the most points in franchise history, along with guys who've played well in Ivan Barbashev and Mark Stone. I mean, how can you not bet on the Vegas Golden Knights in this series? They are the better team. They look like the better team. The depth, everything else. It's Vegas in 6.
Yeah, I'm not very high on the Wild. I think this season's been a pleasant surprise for them. I think if if Kaprizov doesn't get injured, I don't even know if they're a wild card team, to be honest. That's how important he is to this team. I mean, he might be the most valuable player in the league, though, just regardless of how many points or games he's played this year, because the Wild are a completely different team without him. So him being back for this series is gigantic. Eriksson Ek is also a very important player of this team, but Vegas is too good. Like they're stacked up and down. They have great defensive depth, great forward depth. And then Aiden Hill gets the job done in goalie. I mean, I think any goalie would put up pretty good numbers in front of that team. So he doesn't have to do a lot, but he can make big saves when they need him to. And he's proven that in the past. But I think Minnesota would take a game just out of desperation, but I think Vegas is going to be all over him. Give me Knights in 5.
The next series up on the agenda is my favorite series of the first round, the Dallas Stars versus the Colorado Avalanche. Odds to win the series, the Stars at 52.4% and the Avalanche at 48.6%. My player to watch is going to be Mackenzie Blackwood. Series winner, I got the Stars in 7. This game is not going to finish in anything no less than 7 games. I would be shocked if it did. And the reason I'm going with Dallas is because I just think their depth overall up and down the lineup is better. And I understand the Colorado Avalanche, they did an overhaul, mid-season overhaul with their roster, bringing in Nelson. They brought in Coyle. They traded Middlestad. You end up overhauling your goaltending and bringing in Blackwood and Wedgwood, who have been a very, very good tandem, an elite tandem, actually, since being acquired in late November, early December. But I look at the Dallas Stars. You have Wyatt Johnston. You have Jason Robertson. Unfortunately, Miro Heiskanen is going to miss at least the first half of the series. I don't know what his status is for the entirety of the series, but that's going to be a huge blow. And Dallas Stars have been struggling a little bit down the stretch, but rather have them struggling these last 2 weeks heading into the playoffs than have it happen in the playoffs. And you might be able to rebuttal saying worst time to struggle is heading into the playoffs. Well, you know what? This team's going to get their head out of the ass. They know they have Stanley Cup aspirations, and they also get a very important piece passed. Tyler Seguin's back for Game 1, baby. Tyler Seguin is so back. And you have the veteran leadership with Jamie Benn, and I love Harley, who has been a very, very good replacement for Miro Heiskanen. He's not no Heiskanen, but he's been a great replacement. So I just think that the Dallas Stars, they have the better goaltending, they have the better depth, and I just think they're going to win it in 7.
Ooh, I'm going to have to disagree with you here. But still in 7 games. I'm taking Avalanche in 7. I mean, you look at the Colorado Avalanche, like you mentioned, over this whole season, which is extremely impressive by McFarland here, is that the Colorado Avalanche have revamped essentially their whole roster, adding a new 3C in Charlie Coyle. They go and get a guy in Martin Nakash. Like, who even is Mikko Rantanen now to the Colorado Avalanche?
No,
probably
for real.
nobody, right? We talk about what he's been able to do with his speed, how he's been able to contribute, and maybe you can talk about the Nathan McKinnon factor, but he is fit like a glove in the Mile High City. We talk about Brock Nelson. That's exactly the piece that you want in that 2C position. I think Ryan Lindgren has very, very much solidified himself and saying that he's playing less minutes. He's been able to be a lot more defensive. And when I look at the Colorado Avalanche, I don't know what it is, but there's always been one guy that's been an X factor for me, and it's Valeri Nichushkin. And of course, a lot of his issues in the past have been well documented. Of course, very unfortunate stuff with what happens with that type of thing. But when he's playing, when he's on the ice, and we damn well know when in playoffs, he shows up, and he's an absolute truck. He manhandles guys. He goes to the net. He puts pucks on the net, and he's able to get the job done. He is my X factor in this series, aside from a guy in Mackenzie Blackwood, who I think will be probably out-goalied by a guy in Jake Ottinger, who usually does show up in a time like this. But even with the Dallas Stars, Miro Heiskanen not being able to play for what sounds like the first 1 or 2 games at least, I don't know. There's a lot of questions here, and that shouldn't shy away from the Stars. Lots of depth. I love that team, but I think they're going to get a little bit of trouble here. So Colorado in 7.
Yeah, this series is a really hard one to pick. You guys both made really good points on both your sides. I'm gonna have to agree with Zach though. I think I have to take the Avs in 7. I don't know. It's just something about this team. Nah, I'm on the Avs train right now. I kind of feel bad for Dallas because last year they had an amazing season, win the conference, and they get to play Vegas in the first round. Like a healthy Vegas team going into the playoffs, and they got pushed to 7 in that series. And then you get to play Colorado, who I've never seen a team revamp their roster like this mid-season. and have this much success. They bring in 2 new goalies. They added a 3C. They trade a star player midseason. Who does that while you're a playoff team and be successful from it? Which that's insane to me. I don't know. I think Miro Heiskanen missing the first few games for the Stars is going to be a bigger deal than people think it's going to be. They're saying it's going to be because he's a star defenseman. He's a top 5, top 10 defenseman in this league. Thomas Harley's been great. Don't get me wrong, but he's not Miro Heiskanen. Jake Ottinger is probably the best goalie in the series, but I think Colorado with their depth up and down the lineup, and they have Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar, which I think is going to put them over the top. In a series like this, I like to take the teams that I think has the best star players because you expect them to be able to show up big. And I think Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar both have a really good history of showing up. And MacKinnon can take over games. He's done this before in the playoffs. I think he will will the Colorado Avalanche to the second round. Give me, like I said, Avs in 7.
No, I'm not going to keep beating a dead horse, but I know, Zach, I don't think I've told you this before, is I look at the series, and if Colorado didn't win in 7 games, I wouldn't sit here and be like, man, like Dallas should have won unless they completely outplayed them. Like, like you guys picking the Avs, I'm like, I don't blame you guys. With me picking Dallas, I know Preston said it to me before. Like, it's a toss-up. It's 50-50. Like, honestly, like it could be a matter of if Nathan MacKinnon shows up and gives you 2 points per game, Colorado might win in 6 games. But if Dallas is able to roll 4 lines and get consistent contributions from guys like Dadonov and your top guns, and then if Tyler Seguin comes in and gives you contributions, like they could win in 6-7 games. So whoever says what wouldn't be mad at either team advancing.
Yeah, there's a reason why Money Puck only has the Stars at a 52% chance to make the second round because even they think it's a toss-up.
Honestly, I think if Colorado had home ice advantage, it'd be flip-flop with the odds.
I think this is a shame. This is a first-round matchup. This should be like a
second
round or a conference final.
On this.
Yeah, I've been very outspoken for a long time about this playoff format.
I agree.
I think it's time to get rid of it. I'm sick of seeing the same matchups every year, and a lot of times you get the best matchups between the 2 and 3 seed in the first round. I hate it. I don't like it.
Leave it for the second round.
Yeah.
And still a shame that both of these teams are top 5 in the league in the standings.
Mm-hmm.
The last series of the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Kings versus the Edmonton Oilers. Odds to win the series, the Kings at 56.5% and the Oilers at 43.5%. My player to watch is going to be Quinton Byfield, and then series winner, I have the Kings in 7 games. And me and Preston, actually, we get to hating each other over this because he's adamant.
We've been debating this a lot.
Yes,
yeah.
for like the past month, who's going to win. And I think the Kings have better depth. I'm concerned about the Oilers' depth. I'm concerned about Stuart Skinner, who hasn't been great in the regular season. But also, like Preston's brought up, like I've brought up a million times, the playoffs, it's a brand new game, right? It's 0-0, round 1, game 1. And Stuart Skinner, statistically, last season, he went on a tear. I know he didn't get off to the greatest start in the postseason, but he found his game. And so you look at Darcy Kemper this season, the regular season, should be a Vezina finalist, in my opinion. He's putting up close to Connor Hellebuck numbers with the 205 goals against and a 920 save percentage. Absolutely absurd. Nobody's talking about it. And Fiala and Kempe and Iafallo, who, by the way, just signed a $3.5 million extension today. Props to him.
Yeah.
I know a little bit of a discount. But, however, though, still got another 3-year deal. And so you also look at their blue line, and I'm not particularly the biggest fan of the Kings blue line, but I think that they play so well defensively as a team that I think they'll still be able to hold it down. One of the best teams in not allowing the puck in the back of the net. They've been one of the best scoring teams. They're actually 8th in the NHL since February 22nd in scoring. Kuzmenko has been a big help for them since the deadline. And I don't care that the Oilers have McDavid, that they have Draisaitl, and I don't care if McDavid puts up 2 points per game, same with Draisaitl. I think the Oilers are going to need another historic performance from them in this year's playoffs to make another run.
Oh, Stewie Skinner. Man, when I look at this series right now, I made a skit on this, kind of like poking fun at this series for it's the 4th year in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And Kings in 7. I don't know what
Love
it is.
it.
It honestly could be less than that. And, I'm looking – shout out to Daily Faceoff because I'm looking at the injuries for this team, the Edmonton Oilers. If you can guess off the top of your head how many guys are out right now without looking, how many guys are technically out? So it could be day to day, it could be IR, whatever. Take a guess.
We're gonna go 8.
8. Okay.
And
Preston.
that's a lot. Yeah, it's probably around like 7, at least 7.
How about 10?
Yeah.
10 guys are out right now. And I think that, counting out a guy in Leon Draisaitl because we know he's going to be back, the biggest injury that will probably be the downfall of the Edmonton Oilers, Matthias Ekholm, who will at least be out for the first round. What an absolute blow to the stomach for the Edmonton Oilers. And aside from goaltending, aside from everything else, because if all these guys come back and if Frederick's healthy for the first game and Evander Kane's good, that forward depth is actually pretty solid. But you take out a guy who munches minutes like Matthias Ekholm. You take out a guy who has been able to absolutely stabilize that first pair with Evan Bouchard, who honestly hasn't exactly been that solid this year. He's been good, but not the guy he was last year. And then you look at the LA Kings, who, if I'm going to be honest, compared to the years that they've played before against the Edmonton Oilers and the years before in the regular season, they have been extremely solid. Add a guy, Andre Kuzmenko, looks like he's found his game yet again with another new team at the start. Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, who is still absolutely dishing it at this age. Philip Deneau, that center depth is crazy. Even the defense. And then Zach, you made a good point. I made a video about this earlier. No one is talking about Darcy Kemper. What he's been able to do this year, how good he's been, how solid he's been when healthy, of course, but how good he's been for the LA Kings. So as I mentioned when I started this rant, and as I will finish, Kings in 7. I don't like to say it because it's a Canadian team, but I think there needs to be a lot happening here for Oilers fans and their team for it to go through.
Yeah, I mean, I can acknowledge that me and Zach have been going back and forth on this for a long time. Probably most of the season with the Oilers. They were my preseason Stanley Cup pick. And because the team I had them playing in the Stanley Cup Final, they even make the playoffs, and the Rangers. So I've been consistent with the Oilers all year, and I'm not gonna change up now. Like, I know this Kings team is different than it has been the last 3 years they've played them in a row. I think Darcy Kemper is going to be a big difference for them in this series. He's the best goalie they've had going into the playoffs these last 4 years, easily. And the Oilers are extremely banged up. I know I sound like a hypocrite when I say I'm going to pick the Oilers to win, just because I've been saying it all year, and I'm not going to switch up now. I believe that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are good enough just to will their team to victory. They pretty much willed them to the Stanley Cup Final last year, especially McDavid. McDavid willed that series single-handedly to 7 games. McDavid is the best player in the world, in my opinion, even though he's not going to have 100 points this year, which is kind of crazy because he's just been so good. It's a down year and only 99 points, so he's a bum. But I still have to go just to keep consistent. No, I think the Oilers find a way to pull this off in 7. I think McDavid is going to have to be heroic though for them to pull this off.
I respect that though. I respect you sticking to your guns and not switching up too.
Yeah.
All right, you beauties. Quick timeout before we get right back to the action. This episode is brought to you by W Energy. Look, hockey's fast. You've got to stay sharp. Whether you're analyzing the power play or yelling at your team to shoot the puck from your couch or whether it's from the stands, that's where W comes in. No sugar, no crash, no artificial flavors, just clean energy that actually works. Go to W.GG and use code CFB Pod for 10% off. That's W.GG, code CFB Pod. Fuel up, stay locked in, and let's get back to the rest of the episode. Moving on to the Eastern Conference, where I don't feel like things are quite as interesting, except the Battle of Ontario is taking place. The Toronto Maple Leafs against the Ottawa Senators. Odds to win the series, the Maple Leafs at 62.7%. The Senators at 37.3%. My player to watch, I'm going with 2 guys here. I couldn't decide. Brady Tkachuk and Austin Matthews. I love both of those players, and I think those 2 players are going to be the X factor for each team in the series. And I get you have Linus Ullmark on the Ottawa Senators side, who's Ottawa, all they needed was a goaltender, and they would make the playoffs, and that's exactly what happened. And Ullmark started the season on an absolute tear, got hurt. He's been kind of average since the injury, but I want to see Linus Ullmark give us regular season Linus Ullmark, because his playoff performances historically have not been good with the Bruins. So I want to see him do it with Ottawa. And Ottawa, with the young team, they're playing with house money, but I just have the Leafs in 6. And I do think that this is the year that Toronto can get it over the hump. This is their best chance with the core four. I know Tavares and Marner are both on expiring deals, but Matthew Knies is having an incredible season. Austin Matthews, I think, will end up putting at least 4 goals in the back of the net here. And also, I think this is the best goaltending tandem and best blue line the Maple Leafs have ever had. You go out and get Kristanov in the offseason, go out and get Ekman Larson in the offseason. Then you recognize at the trade deadline that you can still add some more blue line depth and go out and get a Brandon Carlo from your rival, who's clearly sold at the deadline, the Boston Bruins. And Stolarz has been phenomenal. Joseph Voll has been phenomenal. So overall, I think the depth of this team has been the best in the core four and Austin Matthews era. And looking at an Ottawa Senators team that's very inexperienced outside of guys of like maybe Claude Giroux and Linus Ullmark who have playoff experience, you end up bringing in a guy like Dylan Cousins in the offseason who, outside of his first about 5 games of the season, has not been particularly that well for you. I just think the experience and the skill and the depth of the Toronto Maple Leafs is going to be too much to handle for the Ottawa Senators. And the only reason I do have the Senators pushing this to 6 games is because I think Linus Ullmark will be able to steal them at least a game.
My Leafs. I love my Leafs. If anyone knows who I am, I'm smiling from ear to ear right now because the Battle of Ontario is back. I'm very excited. Off the top, I'm going to say Leafs in 7, mostly because I just want to see the most games out of this series. I mean, when you look at this team right off the bat, it looks like their bottom 6 has been figured out. That 3rd and 4th line, the one thing that I think a lot of people have preached, and I think that we're seeing a lot more chemistry here. Mitch Marner, he hit 100 points for the first time in his career. Very big to watch out for. And I think that's a big confidence booster. I think Austin Matthews is going to have a very nice series. William Nylander, I believe he scored over 40 now this year. He's been good. John Tavares, right now on his last year of his contract, has looked great. The defense, you mentioned there, Brandon Carlo and Morgan Rielly have looked very, very good. I don't really know if we know what's going to happen with Jake McCabe with going into the series. I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be healthy enough, even for Oliver Ekman Larson. I have honestly not sure. But there are big pieces that I know will contribute to the success, especially in that defensive core. And even when you look at the Ottawa Senators, this is not a team that you should be not scared about because they have very good talent. Dylan Cousins has fit into that system like a glove. You're excited to see what a guy in Tim Stützle will be able to do. And Zach, I share what you said there about Brady Tkachuk. He is going to be a big-time X factor along with Linus Ullmark for this Ottawa Senators team and what their success will look like. But it's exciting to see another Canadian team like this. I think it's very well-deserved for the Ottawa Senators, and I'm happy to see them here. But again, with that being said, give me the Leafs in 7 a lot because I want to see the most in this series. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really, really fun series to watch. I think it's going to be very, very, very physical as well. I think Ottawa is a team that, especially Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle is another kind of heavier guy that can, like, I think they play better when they're playing a bit of a more physical game. They do have the skill to back it up too. You mentioned Dylan Cousins. I think Jake Sanderson is going to be a big part in the series for the Sens as well. I think all the pressure is going to be on Toronto. I think this is their best team they've had with the core four. Their depth up and down, their bottom 6 has gotten a lot better. Their best goalie tandem they've had in a long, probably I can't even remember how long. Who do you think they're going to start for game 1? Stolarz?
Stolarz.
Yeah,
if I had to take a guess, it's Stolarz just because, I guess everything you hear on the radio, radio and everything, it feels like Stolarz, but honestly, either one, I think
you can't go wrong, and that's one advantage you have. Like it kind of reminds me like Boston from a few years ago. Like you play one, if he doesn't have a great game, you play the other one. It's not necessarily a horrible situation to have because you can rely on the backup if needed. could be in a lot worse situation. I think the big X factor in this series is going to be Mitch Marner. He's had an amazing season this year, over 100 points. A lot of people got on his case last year for saying he kind of disappeared in the playoffs last year. Only had 3 points in that 7-game series. He's going to be a UFA this summer. He's going to be asking for a lot of money. Not sure if Toronto's going to give him the money. That's a conversation for another day. But if he wants to prove that, he's that elite high-end player that's going to get $13 million a year, $14 million a year, he needs to be big for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this playoff run. And I think he can be. I think Toronto is the more experienced team, and I think they'll be able to handle whatever Ottawa can give them. So I'm going to take Leafs in 6.
Moving on to our next series, the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New Jersey Devils. Odds to win the series, the Hurricanes are at 58.7%, the Devils at 41.3%. My player to watch is going to be a Sebastian Aho, but I do have the Hurricanes winning the series in 5 games. My biggest question is, how long can the Devils hang around without Jack Hughes being in the lineup? As we all know, a couple months ago, Jack Hughes suffered a season-ending injury, and the Devils have kind of been average since then. Markstrom, he got off to a decent start. He hasn't been great since then, and the Devils were my preseason cup pick to come out of the Eastern Conference. Clearly not confident in that now, considering how the Devils have looked for the second half of the season without Hughes. Listen, I love Brett. I love Heishier. Dougie Hamilton, huge return tonight. He's back for game 1 in the playoffs, and he is the definition of probably an MVP-type defenseman. That team runs on Dougie Hamilton. But you just look at the Hurricanes' depth, and I just think that is too much. Rod Brendamore has always found a way to outcoach in these round 1 games. He's always found success in it. My question after round 1 would be, can they get over the hump? My question also for them is goaltending. But I love Jarvie. I love Aho. And I get the whole Rantanen situation and losing out on a big goal scorer in Rantanen, but he didn't fit in Carolina, frankly. And Stankoven has been more than wonderful for the Hurricanes. I just think that the Hurricanes, they are going to be way too much to handle for a very inexperienced and a very young Devils team.
I mean, the series, it sucks for the New Jersey Devils fans. I'll start off with that. It has not been a very fun season, in a season where it was actually supposed to be a lot different. Jack Hughes being out really does suck. Cody Glass being essentially your second line center was not expected, even though he's actually done pretty well for the situation being put in. Now, again, with that being said, where do I go here? I'm going to go Canes in 6. I do think that New Jersey does push a little bit here. I think with the addition of Jacob Markstrom, especially having a guy like that now, is going to make a difference. Will Siegenthaler be in the lineup? Dougie Hamilton being there is great, but will he be in there as well? That's going to be another X factor. The X factor for the Hurricanes, how is their goaltending going to look? I mean, who is going to start? Is it going to be Frederik Andersen, or is it going to be Pyotr Kochetkov, right? This type of thing here is the biggest aspect that I think we're going to go into, right? How are the Carolina Hurricanes going to fare with their goaltending? But I think, Zach, you hit it on the head there when talking about Seth Jarvis, when talking about Sebastian Aho, even Jackson Blake, who has looked very solid here. Where do we kind of go with these two? The questions we have, but I think depth-wise, they got him booked here. Carolina in 6, easy choice.
Yeah, I gotta say, out of all the playoff matchups, I'm kind of very not interested in this one. If I'm ever wrong for saying that, I don't know. I just kind of find this one not really exciting to me. Jack Hughes getting hurt kind of killed the Devils' momentum. I mean, Dougie Hamilton coming back is going to be huge for them. I think a lot of people don't understand how important he is to that team. They're very different when he's out there. He plays a lot, and he's a very important player for them. It's good that he was able to get a regular season game under his belt before going into the playoffs just to get back into the swing of things. But just looking at Carolina's roster, they're very deep, up and down. My only concern with them really is goaltending. Because, like you said, I'm not sure who starts, because neither goaltender has been particularly great this year in Freddie Andersen or Kochetkov. Kachukow's been their starter most of the year, so I'm going to have to assume there's a better chance that he's going to be playing game 1 in the playoffs for them. I think New Jersey will make this interesting. I just think Carolina is too defensively sound, and they're not going to make the mistakes. I think the Devils are going to make that. I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring series, to be honest with you. I think a lot of one-goal games. I think this has a good chance to have a lot of overtimes as well. But I'm going to take the Canes in 6.
The next series up, we also get round 2 of the Battle of Florida. As you guys know, 2022, we got the Battle of Florida as well. But the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Florida Panthers. Odds to win this series, they have the Lightning at 47.9% and the Panthers at 52.1%. My player to watch, it's going to be none other than Sasha Barkov. I do have the Lightning winning in 7 games, though, and it's strictly just because I think that you look at the Lightning this season, they went under the radar coming into it, and even myself, I had them as like a fringe wildcard team where they were last year, but they finished as the second best team in the Atlantic Division and competed for the Atlantic Division top spot going into Game 80. And I just look at their roster with Nikita Kucherov. You have Braden Point, Jake Kensel, who's been phenomenal with them. By the way, Nikita Kucherov is one of 4 players in NHL history to have 4 consecutive 80-plus assist seasons. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Will probably win the Hart Trophy unless Nathan McKinnon somehow steals it or, unlikely Connor Hellebuck. I like what they've done on the blue line, and I get rid of Stamkos in the offseason. And coming into the season, it was like, how are you going to replace that? Is Jake Gensel really worth losing your captain since 2008, 2010? Some Lightning fans at this point might say, no, it's not worth it, but Gensel has produced a little bit more than what Stamkos would have if he would have stayed in Tampa Bay. And some Tampa fans, if you guys are here, just rebuttal in the comments if you guys really hate that. But I look at a guy like Brandon Hagel, who has been phenomenal for them. You have Cirelli, and of course, can't mention the Lightning without a bounce-back season from Vasilevsky, who he is a Vezina finalist in my opinion. He's putting up numbers of around a 2.1 goals against and a 918, 920 save percentage. He's been phenomenal. And of course, the Panthers you can't always count out. Defending Stanley Cup champions, back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals champions. And if this team gets going, I don't think there's a team that's stopping them. But at the end of the day, with how they're kind of looking right now, Sam Reinhart hasn't been playing great. And I think that this Lightning team, I know they have a lot of experience with the Panthers. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be physical. But I think that the Lightning have the better goaltending. And at the end of the day, I think that could be the difference maker here.
Well, before I start with the Florida Panthers, I will say you cannot come out this series, but I'm going to count them out. Lightning in 7, man. When I look at the Florida Panthers here, okay, the one thing I will say is extremely loaded with talent. Good team, but you are going to be missing Aaron Ekblad for 2 games. The status of Matthew Tkachuk is a question, which is extremely scary. But you still have Sam Bennett. You still have Sam Reinhart. You still have Brad Marchand, Carter Verhaeghe, Barkov, even a guy in Gus Forsling. Maybe not as great as the years last year. Still very good. But then you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, who, even if you look at their lineup and you say, that's not really that good, I don't know what you're looking at. Because even without 2 guys in Luke Glendening, who has been a nice 4th-line piece for them, and Oliver Bjorkstrand along with Yanni Gourde in that trade, this team's extremely deep. Jake Gensel, Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Anthony Cirelli, Brandon Hagel. I don't really need to go through all of it because Zach already did, but I'm going to do it again. Vasilevsky, and we go on. Even Victor Hedman. These types of players are going to win you games. And the depth that they have should not be underestimated either with a Nick Paul 3C. Are you kidding me? I love that. But altogether, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they look like that team again. They look like that they can push through. And I don't know. I'd be a little bit scared to face them. I think there are some teams that have bested them a little bit if they were getting the series with them. But I think Tampa's got it. And just Bolts in 7, man. I don't know. It's weird to say, but Bolts in 7.
Yeah, Tampa has kind of just revived themselves. They kind of retooled for a couple of years after those 3 Stanley Cup final appearances in a row, back-to-back cups. Vasilevsky, I think, has been the bigger story for me this season. He kind of was starting to look a little bit kind of over the hill last year. Mind you, he was coming off of surgery and played a lot of hockey the last few years. I think he probably plays more than any other goalie in the league. He's one of the few goalies in the league that is still playing like 60-plus games every year. a lot of teams are starting to move away from, just having that goalie that plays like 70% of the games and starting to move to more of a tandem. But Vasilevsky's still one of those guys, and I think his resurgence is been a really big part of the Lightning success this year. Bringing in Jake Gensel has been a great move for them. Brandon Hagel's having a career year, and Kucherov's probably going to win MVP. He's gone under the radar as well. He's all-time great player in my opinion. But Florida, I have to give them respect of being the defending Stanley Cup champions, but that injury issues with Matthew Tkachuk is a really, 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 really big concern. They're a different team when he plays. He can control the pace of a game. He can get in other guys' heads, maybe Jake Gensel have a bad night or start, hitting Kucherov pretty hard in the corner and throw him off his game a little bit. I don't know if they'll be able to replace that physicality they get out of him. Sam Bennett, I think, is going to have to step up in a big way until Matthew Tkachuk could return to the lineup. They still really don't know when he'll be ready to play. They think he might play for game one. They're not 100% sure, but he should be back at some point. I'm not sure if he'll even be 100%. But playoff Bobs is also a thing. He was phenomenal the last couple of years in their Stanley Cup final runs. But I think Tampa, they loaded up at the deadline as well. I think they are the better team in this series. I'm going to take Tampa in 7.
Love the picks, boys. Going on to the final matchup of our first round predictions. Before I start with the series, just want to say Montreal and the Hurricanes right now are tied at 1 at the first intermission. Montreal still has not clinched yet in Game 82. All they need is a point to clinch. Otherwise, if they lose in regulation to a very weak Hurricanes lineup tonight, the Blue Jackets can win with the regulation win tomorrow night, which will be April 17th. So we'll see. However, though, Washington Capitals versus the Montreal Canadiens. I was to win the series. Capitals at 69.5%. Canadiens at 30.5%. Players to watch. I'm going with 2 players here. I have Alexander Ovechkin from the Capitals and then Nick Suzuki from the Habs. I do have the Capitals in 6 games, though, and I think this offense for the Canadiens is going to end up pushing the series another game further than what people might expect. And granted, you have a Habs team that hasn't really been great at defending off the rush, and they haven't been great at keeping pucks other than that. And that's why I think maybe if they can get into a shootout in a game or two, especially Game 3 at the Bell Center, you have all the energy going, and if you get in there, you get an early goal in the Bell Center, you grab what you had momentum, and you double that momentum to 200%. I think maybe that could be a game where you can steal. Now it's 2-1 going back to Game 4. But you look at this Washington Capitals team, and I think when I did an episode with Jimmy Hockey and then Zach here, we were talking about what maybe the Capitals could have added at the deadline. You look at the roster up and down, there are not many holes, if any at all, on this roster. And I get the injury to Logan Thompson's a killer. That's why having a guy like Charlie Lindgren as your backup is crucial, because now you're not stuck with this fringe AHL starter backup goaltender going into the playoffs as the best team in the Eastern Conference. Now you have a guy that has playoff experience for you last year, that was a starting goaltender for you last year, and is giving you multiple games this season and a good amount of games in Logan Thompson's absence. And of course, the burst on the scene of Potras and McMichael, and you have the blue line, which I think they have one of the deepest blue lines in the league. And, of course, Alexander Ovechkin's at a goal per game of like 0.63 or something ridiculous like that this season. So, Dylan Strome also has been phenomenal. So, you can go up and down this roster and name off every single player, and they have genuinely made a great contribution.
I mean, looking at the Washington Capitals, and if they face the Montreal Canadiens, it's so hard for me because I've went back and forth with this series and just how Montreal has looked over the past bit, and you kind of get in that hype a bit. And you say, could they do it? Could they do it in 7? Could it happen? The one thing I look at for the Montreal Canadiens is actually, there is a couple of things. Sam Montembeault, he has been killer down the stretch for the Montreal Canadiens. You look at his stats, look at his advanced stats. They've been very, very, very good. We've seen in one game what Ivan Demidov can do with the puck. Now, on the back check, if you saw that video, maybe not the same. But even in that sense, the Montreal Canadiens are exciting. And I think when I look back at this series and I say, if you remember the series between the Washington Capitals and the Maple Leafs, in that first year with Mitch Marner and Matthews in their first series, and just kind of how that looks, right? And it reminds you that they're going into this with almost zero expectations, right? The fans just want to be there in the playoffs. The players just want to experience it. They just want to actually be in this series, right? So there's no expectation. If they go on and win the cup, zero expectation. Even if they go in the next round, doesn't matter. If they lose one game, it doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the Montreal Canadiens, they don't have to play for anything, essentially. They're playing for their team and for the future. And why not have this against the same team that it was happening against before? Now, with the Washington Capitals, it's a little bit different. They have all these like zero expectations this year, and yet everyone's performing. Dylan Strome missed sauce and pucks over to Alexander Ovechkin. Pierre-Luc Dubois in that trade has looked extremely good. Connor McMichael, protest that's a tough injury. We'll see how that goes, especially with Logan Thompson. Same thing. Injury-wise, he's been stellar, and now you had a guy like Ryan Leonard. Oh, my God. But then you look at the defense, very solid. All this to say, I think I was thinking Habs in 7 before, and I don't think anybody can rip me for that there because it's just the hype. But after a little bit of consideration and some sitting down, having a glass of water, I am going to say the Washington Capitals in 6 games. Just how things have been down the stretch, a little bit of experience here and there. It's Capitals for me.
Yeah, I was going to make that comparison as well. This Montreal team really does remind me of the 2016-17 Toronto Maple Leafs, a team that had no expectations going into the year. They just had number one overall pick. They got Austin Matthews. They were awful the year before, and then they have a season with no expectations. And they end up making the playoffs, and they gave the Capitals a pretty good run for their money in that series. Montreal's a team playing really, really loose. They do have some defensive issues, but they can score so much. And, Nick Suzuki has been so freaking good this year. Up and down the roster, they've been awesome. Lane Hudson, phenomenal. Washington is a team for me that I've been saying this all year as well. Like, I kind of waiting for them to slow down, because this is a team I wasn't very high on going into the year. They made a lot of offseason moves, and they all worked out shockingly. Pierre-Luc Dubois was a gamble coming in. Jacob Chikrin's been amazing for them. Same thing with Logan Thompson, been really good. Your Protas getting hurt right at this time of the year does hurt a lot. He's been a really underrated player for them. He's been really good. But Ovi's still rolling. Dylan Strome has been so amazing too. I can't believe they got him for free from Chicago. I still can't believe they didn't even tender him and they didn't even try to trade him. That's still insane to me. But I think the experience of Washington is going to shine in this series. I think Montreal is going to give them a really good run for their money, though. I think this is going to be a really exciting series. I'm going to watch at least game 3 or 4 in the Bell Center. I just want to see the Montreal fans going crazy, because they go crazy for a regular season game, and they're going to. This team being in the playoffs this early is just, I think, a really good start for them. If they shock the world and win the series, like, okay, let's see how far this run can go. But I don't think they'll. I think I'm going to take the Caps in 6, but I think Montreal is going to make this a really fun series, and they won't go away quietly.
I don't think.
Shout out Columbus, though. Sorry, I had to say that. Shout out Columbus. They might still.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal could mess it up. I mean, we could all look like idiots for talking about this for the last 10 minutes.
But
It not even matter.
If Columbus wins it, what's our series predictions? If they end up getting in the
Caps in
Habs
like 4 or 5.
Caps
I think
in
they'll
6.
kill them. I think the Caps will kill them.
Caps in 5. I'd go Caps in 5. I think Columbus would figure out a way to win a series, especially with guys like Marchenko, Fantilli, who just scored his 30th goal last night. First player out of the 2023 draft class to record a 30-goal season, by the way. Absolutely impressive stuff from, I believe, the number 3rd overall pick in that draft.
Yeah, all Columbus is in the same situation in Montreal. I mean, like, just playing with house money, way ahead of expectations. So, yeah, I mean, if they make it, just have fun and see how far it can go.
I love it. I would love an upset for the Habs. Let's move on to the most exciting part of this episode, our Stanley Cup picks. So, you know what? I'll let one of you guys go first on this one.
What do you think, Preston? Me or you?
I mean, I kind of already revealed my Stanley Cup pick because I'm going to stay loyal to the Oil. They were my preseason pick. I'm going to stay consistent. I don't feel great about this. I really, really don't. I don't even know if they make it to the second round. I don't think they're going to beat Vegas, to be honest with you. But I'm just going to stay stay committed. I'm in a long-term relationship with this team right now, I guess. So I guess I'm going to pick the Oilers, and I think in the East, I think it's going to be either Toronto or Tampa.
Mhm.
Love it.
Well, if I have to go next, let me paint you a picture. Okay. So, as you know, I just made all my picks. You know who I picked. And it's no surprise that I'm a fan of them. And I'm not just saying this because of many various things, but I'm going with the Leafs. And I will say this because the Toronto Maple Leafs, if they end up being the Ottawa Senators, that's great. I think that at the end of the day, they are the better team. They look good. I think they have the pieces to do this. And with Tampa Bay moving on, I think throughout the season, we've seen this in the past. In that one series there, throughout in regular season games, they have had the Tampa Bay Lightning's number. I believe they've scored, was it 4 or 5 goals in each of those games, which is absolutely insane with how Andrei Vasilevsky has looked. Nonetheless, we move on. Though those series, it's going to be the biggest thing for them. And I think they have Tampa's number. They go on, let's say they go and face Washington or Carolina. I think that's kind of how it's going to work out anyway. I think the Leafs can do that. I think that when we talk about depth, when we talk about goaltending, I think it's been very similar. That's not to discredit what Washington's done and how they've looked, and not to say that other things can happen. But when we talk about those guys, it's like I really do think that this can happen. I really do think that is a possibility that the Toronto Maple Leafs get there. Now, look at the West. There are a couple of teams who could get to the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, and that is only in the Central, which is extremely scary if you were a fan of any of those teams. And I mean, Preston, when you can really count out the Edmonton Oilers? No, not really. Vegas, who knows if there's a Cinderella run? I think that I really do think that Toronto can get up there and actually make that jump if they can push past these series. And I really do think that they can. And I do think the depth is there and everything else. But if I had to pick a team out of the West, I don't know. I think I'm feeling Colorado, and maybe we see that really cool matchup of Matthews versus McKinnon. But you know me, I'd love to see a Leafs Cup win and them lift it. And I genuinely do think it can happen. Some people might laugh at that. They might cringe. They might make the jokes. But I don't know. I got a little bit of a feeling this year, not to sound like a broken record, but I do think it can happen. I genuinely do think so.
I love the Leafs pick. I think this is their best shot to win the cup or at least make it out of the East. I'm going at a completely different route. Out of the East, I have none other than the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think this is the best team in the Eastern Conference, maybe probably 1B or 1A, excuse me. Them in Toronto, I think. I think whoever comes out of that Atlantic bracket is moving on to the finals. Out of the Western Conference, none other than the Dallas Stars. Got the Stars winning in 6 games. I just look at the Stars roster up and down. Like, we even failed to mention guys like Rope Hintz. You have Matthew St. Mason Marchment, who have been phenomenal for this team. And you even bring up guys like a Sam Steele and a Oscar Beck and a Colin Blackwell, who, if you guys remember in last year's playoffs, they were a great fourth line for this team and helped them steal a series in against Vegas. I believe Sam Steele had the go-ahead goal early in that third period against Vegas that eventually was the game-winning goal to win the game 2-1. So you just have this team up and down. And if you can get Heiskanen back for Game 3 in Round 1, I don't think there's a singular team in the Western Conference that can beat them, although they could run in the same situation as last year where you face Juggernaut in the first, second round, get to the Western Conference Finals, and halfway through the Western Conference Finals, you're so gassed and so beat up and tired out that eventually a team that I didn't think was better with depth-wise, they just beat Dallas because they have a hot player or two, and that team goes on to the Cup Finals. But yeah, I have Dallas in 6 here. Thank you guys for listening and watching our playoff preview. Zach, again, thank you for joining us. You guys can find him on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Do you post on YouTube at all?
I will be soon. I finally figured out my audio, so that's a good thing.
But
yeah, YouTube will be coming soon. Very soon.
Again, thank you guys for being here. If you guys enjoy all of our content, subscribe, notification bell, like the episode as well if you guys stay till the end. And we'll see you guys in our next episode.